This
Minutes.
conference will now
Yes.
be recorded.
And we have someone to move for acceptance of the agenda.
Move to accept.
I'll second.
Okay. I'm not going through my report really because we're going to get most of it from Hector. Maybe Lisa, you know a little bit about what's happening with the funding that we've all been pushing for. You want to give us a little update on that maybe?
Sure. So the first phase of funding that was about between 3.8 and 3.9 billion dollars that was approved through the CARES Act has started to come in, and so we're starting to see, I think, $500 million that the president signed off on today, and that's going to come for operating. The next tranche of money has been introduced in the House under what's called the HEROES Act. And that would include, looks like about four and change billion for the MTA. And this is all for operating money. There would also be funding for hazard pay for workers. And that's something that the unions have been strongly pushing for. So I was actually on an advocates call earlier today. There's not a lot of faith that this new legislation is going to go through as is, but that is seen as an initial talking point. So, essentially, from the advocacy side, that there's a lot of cohesion nationally in reaching out to elected officials to impress upon them the importance of this additional pot of money. And that would be for through the end of 2020, but the MTA also anticipates that it's going to need probably altogether about $10 billion through the end of 2021. And just really the importance of ensuring that there's sufficient operating money, not just obviously so that the trains can run, is so that the capital program doesn't get robbed. Or that the lockbox doesn't get unlocked, so that there will be a capital program going forward, and that means new rolling stock and signal improvements. And there's a project actually that's coming before the board, I believe next week, that will be for signal improvements between Babylon and Patchogue. So ensuring that these funds are available for the capital program to do those important projects means that you have to make sure that there's sufficient operating funding. So, if you happen to have the phone number of any of your elected officials and you want to let them know why it's so important as a rider, that they look at moving forward these funding proposals, that's certainly something advocacy organizations around the country would appreciate.
All right, thanks. I see that we have Hector. Hector, you're on?
Yes.
Okay, you're sideways. I've been told you were crooked, but I really didn't believe it till now.
He's straight up in this here.
You're on the side. I don't know how you're standing like that. Listen, we'll focus really briefly on from you because we're at the stage now where there could be a reopening in 2 weeks to the city, possibly. Long Island, maybe,
I can't hear you.
A little bit longer from Long Island. However, I know there's concerns about not knowing how many people are going to be coming on the trains, so you don't want to add some trains on, but the concern obviously the other end is that what if people do start to come back? You can't hear? He says you can't hear. Can anybody else hear?
Yes.
I can hear.
Yeah.
You can't hear, Hector?
Hector hasn't
I
started
can hear
talking.
Mr. Garcia.
Okay.
Oh no, Mark got cut off before. I heard him start and then I didn't hear anything.
Can you hear me
Now
now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so yeah,
Yes.
some of these to start off with, we're gonna want little plans you guys have for the reopening, which may come in the next 2 weeks. We understand that there's one concern I've read that the MTA's concern is people may not come back right away, so you don't want to add on trains. Obviously, the other concern is if people do come back, having enough trains for them. All the issues of social distancing. I'm assuming you guys are not going to do the same thing that the proposal possibly that Foy made about putting making reservations to take the subway. I don't think that's it's going to go work for their train. But if you can give us really a step-by-step, in-depth analysis of what your plans are rolling out, not overall, but really specific, what you're looking for, what steps the railroad is taking, what riders should expect. Let's say in 2 weeks, if they reopen for professional services, which a lot of people are on this train are taking, and as well as the construction guys who are starting now. So if you guys can just give us a real in-depth analysis, we would appreciate it.
All right. I mean, currently, our plan is to continue the essential service until things open up. And then once certain people start coming back, then we'll start adding service. So, for example, for Memorial Day weekend, we don't plan to add any service, then. That's not considered essential, any tourism stuff at this point. What we're looking at is a lot of, one thing is it's a challenge. I don't think it's going to be fully possible to have social distancing on trains as people come back. So it's going to depend on more about people's social habits of staying, keeping their hands clean, wearing masks, trying to stay as distant as possible. But we know that it's going to be kind of impossible. And we're not going to, there has been talk about trying to say meter to an extent, but I don't see how that's feasible on a daily basis, especially like at Penn Station. How are you going to control that? I mean, you wouldn't be able to do that and run the same amount of trains. You could only do that if you run less trains almost. So I don't think that's going to happen. We are so over the last week we have increased our cleaning of all the train cars. They're being cleaned and sanitized once every 24 hours, and the stations are cleaned twice every 24 hours. We are working with MTA and some vendors testing products, like some cleaning products that you apply and they can stay on the surfaces disinfecting for say 60 days, 30 days for longer. We're also talking to vendors that have these new products that have these ultraviolet light that is used in hospital waiting rooms to disinfect. We're just testing things out, seeing, in a sense, that's more for a long term. What we're doing now works, but we're looking at, since things are going to change, we might have to invest in some of that technology for long term. On the train cars, these disinfecting, the light doesn't seem as feasible because you have to it's a robot that they're very heavy, and then you would have to go through every car, and then we don't have the time to do that on platform. So then how can we do that on yards and move this thing around? So that may not work, but we're just testing it out. That might be better for like some of our offices and things, employee areas, or maybe even for waiting rooms. Another option with that is actually installing permanent installations in train cars, like in the ceilings or on the floors with this light to kind of disinfect. We're just exploring it to see if we're going to have to invest in that. So currently, I think our working thought is maybe June 1st would be when we would think to start, but no decisions have been made. But that's our first. We're planning now for June 1st as a tentative start of increasing some service.
Hector, what is the plan as far as the governor's executive order that everyone on the railroad has to wear a mask? How will you be enforcing that or not enforcing that? Will you, if someone doesn't have one, will the railroad be giving out masks? I mean, what are your plans to? I mean, for conductors, what is their role in this?
I mean, right now, it's the employees have to wear their masks, and we need the public needs to kind of do their part, just like they have to do it, in the streets. We don't. On Long Island, we don't have, the police aren't necessarily enforcing it.
That's the question. What if you asked, what is the request? I mean, we've spoken to the governor's office. In the parks, they are giving out tickets to the police if you're not wearing it. We just want to know what role the conductor does or doesn't have, because one rider is maybe upset that someone is not wearing it. They're going to ask the conductor about it. What is he being told to do?
All he's being told to do now is just remind customers if they don't have it. We're adding announcements, and we're trying to be a little creative with announcements and social media messaging and that kind of stuff. It kind of has to be, everybody has to do their part.
Mm-hmm. You want to talk about fares and all that kind of stuff? Right now you're running off peak, right? All fares are all off peak?
Yes, sir. Currently everything is off peak. And in terms of any changes, I know we're getting requests for whether it's changing the refund policy or changing the fares right now. we're not really changing anything else, until we know, how we come out of this financially before we make any decisions.
All right, I have a lot more questions, but I don't want to take up all the time. Does anybody else want to jump in with some questions? Feel free.
Yeah, I have one question.
Matt
I
Waring.
said we'd only be running essential services through like the end of this month, but we got Memorial Day weekend coming up, which is probably one of the biggest weekends along with Labor Day. Is there a contingency plan if we do get a lot of commuter traffic or ridership that particular Friday afternoon and Sunday going back in?
Right now, we're working with like Suffolk County. They have like a task force with the different like the ferries and Discover Long Island. We're trying to get a sense of, are hotels opening up or the beaches opening up? Is there going to be really a big push or not? As of now, I don't think everything is fully opening up. So we're preparing based on that.
Okay.
Because in a sense, if we start, if we do start advertising that we're adding trains, then that kind of encourages people. So right now, we don't want to encourage behavior. We're trying to stick to what everybody else is supposed to be doing.
Well, then can you give us an update on whatever construction's been going on so far and what's going to continue?
Yeah, so there's a lot. Actually, we're doing a lot of construction. We're taking advantage since there's less trains and our workers are still out there. We're doing a lot of track work, state of the repair, grade crossings, paving. What I was going to say. Third track continues very aggressively on Monday, School Street. They're going to close that grade crossing, for the 6 months to get that grade crossing eliminated. And in July, actually, mid-July is when New Hyde Park Road is scheduled to be, the underpass is going to be pushed into place over a weekend in July.
What about Penn Station?
You mean the construction at Penn? That continues. Yeah. We're still on track to have that construction done by the end of the year. What was going to the new entrance?
Because when I was there a couple weeks ago, less than a couple weeks ago, there was no construction going on. I think I was the only person in Penn Station that was, wasn't pushing a cart, but there was no work being done. So I just wanted to make sure that it's, you take advantage of the empty Penn Station to get work done.
One of the things that even though work is continuing, there's some of it, I guess it could appear like there's less work going on because we don't have some of the supervision and things like that are being done more remotely. We're not sending a lot of extra people out, putting them in danger. So the people that have to be on site are there, and people that don't have to be on site aren't there.
Anybody else?
Do we want to even talk about the ticket refund routine, or we don't want to talk about that?
We do. I thought maybe even any questions about the new policy, but yeah, we sent that letter and we're going to talk about his response. If everyone's done asking him about, going forward, then we can go into.
Matt Camper actually has a couple of questions for Hector.
Who does?
Matt Camper.
Okay.
First of all, Hector, I know I have been curious about this, and this was on the back of my mind because I saw the other day that you guys aren't doing the extra services related to the Greenport branch and the Montauk branch, and with Memorial Day coming up, that's another thing. What's the status of the Cannonball? Is that going to run, or is that going to be on hold until such time?
No, that's on hold.
Okay.
Those kind of.
Other question. Okay, go ahead, Hector. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say the Cannonball, our beach, all our packages, all those summer tourism things. It takes, staff has to be there to kind of program and do all the coordination for that. So that's not essential right now. So we haven't done anything that has to be done. So if everything opens up, it will take us a little time to ramp it up. So it's possible it could still happen, but it's not going to happen, as it normally does for September. for Memorial Day.
Okay, got that. And then the other thing, I saw I think a few weeks ago, Glencoe Road supposed to be done in June. Is that still on track to be done in June?
Yes, that's the bridge. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Larry, you want to go into it now? Good.
Well, I got one other question. Hector, what's the union and the personnel's feelings about all this right now? What's the scuttlebutt on how they feel about going back into operations? I'm just kind of curious how they.
So like myself and like a lot of more administrative type managers and folks are working telecommuting. All our normal, most of our labor workforce is out there working. The track guys, the signal guys, the conductors. So for them, they've been working all along. Early on we had not a lot employees were getting infected, but ever since we've been implementing all these measures of wearing masks, keeping the employees social distancing, we've actually been working with the laborers on making accommodations. So for example, if there was guys that we used to be on a truck together or on a car together, we've allowed them to use their personal vehicles to go to work sites to have keep them separately. That makes them feel safer. We're letting them do that. So actually, we found our numbers are going in the right direction. So we're not getting a lot of those employees that have been working and they're not necessarily getting sick.
I think part of what Larry's asking is, to be blunt, are we going to have ticket collection in full force when people get back on the trains, or a conductor's not going to want to go through the trains? The last 2 times I took the train, my ticket wasn't collected. I was the only person on the train. They saw me get on. I told you this. They saw me get off the window and come through to get the ticket. Are we going to have a problem with ticket collection as June 1st if it's reopened? That's I think Larry's kind of pushing that, right, Larry? That's what you want to know?
Yeah, you're being more blunt than me, but okay, yes.
Yeah, well,
the last few weeks we've been pushing them more with that, and then so if you look at our log, we're starting to have incidents of people being belligerent. Like some people feel that they shouldn't have to pay, but the crews are starting to enforcing that more. They're starting to walk through the cars more, so it is picking up.
All right, then the question is, do we want to start about the ticket refund policy and what's been going on? Those of you that are on Facebook know people have gotten furious because they return a monthly 2 weeks in and they get 55 cents a check. Like it's more of a.
Oh, wow.
well,
like
Larry, you saw the letter we sent, right? It was
Yes.
attached to the agenda. So
Yeah.
Hector, let's go through your reply letter.
So the refund policy is the same policy that existed. You're pretty much charged for every day that you had the ticket. One thing that we're doing exception in terms of say you stopped working on the 13th and you didn't turn it in until 5 days later, so you are entitled to more of a refund. So if you send it in to us and show some documentation that my employer told me to stop working on this date and I didn't get to turn it on until that date, we're giving people that difference. It's not that it's a lot, but we're making that adjustment at least if on a case-by-case basis. But the policy is.
There's another issue, Hector, though, on that. People who are getting it through their employer, the mail was being forwarded from the initial place, and that could take up to a week and a half. They may have gotten their monthly ticket forwarded to them, and then taken 2 weeks before they got it. Those people should not be penalized either.
Well, if they reach out, if they can show us something that can prove that happened and it's justifiable, then we can make an accommodation. But it's like a case-by-case basis. We're not doing a blanket kind of everybody's going to get a refund.
Hey, Hector, I understand the situation with March and April. We have people now saying that they tried to cancel May's and they're not getting response. Do you have enough manpower to handle this situation?
Well, yeah. So some of those folks that manage mail and ride, we do have less people. They're not all working full force. And then there is a cutoff date that you have to kind of call in by or go online to cancel it. They have tried to add some people around this time of the month when that happens, but if you're hearing that, let us know when you're hearing it, and we can.
Okay, I'll monitor the social media, and then when I see stuff or hear stuff, I'll get the information over to you. I know there's been a lot of complaints about that.
Well, guys, did you want Hector to explain about the 10 trip, the other part of our letter? About we asked for it to be extended.
Again, we're not in a position to extend it now. That has to be an MTA-wide policy because it affects any refund things like that. Will have to apply to all agencies. 2 years ago, the validity period was extended for 2 years. So, after we come out of this, if people still have those tickets that maybe that still haven't expired, maybe at that point something can be done. But we're not making any changes now.
Okay, any other questions?
Hello, Andrew Pawlik here from Passengers United. Charlton, are you on here?
Yes, I am.
All right, he wanted to speak, so Charlton, take it away.
Wait, who's coming on?
Sure, if that's okay with the moderator.
Wait, hold on. I don't know who's coming. Who's coming on?
My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president of Passengers United.
Okay, so you're coming on for a question, right? Not you said you want to speak. But
Yes,
it's
I'm
for a
asking
question.
you a question, sir.
Good, great, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to ask the PCAC LIRR committee, and obviously my question is regarding the Atlantic ticket. We've been hearing reports all week on the news that they are trying to get the program extended, but it's my understanding, and I spoke to Hector about this yesterday. Hector clarified for me that the program is being kept for the entire year of its term. But whether it's going to be renewed next year, we need clarification on that. And we also want clarification on the monthlies that was approved as part of the congestion pricing plan. What can the PCAC do on its part to keep that program and get it implemented by July so we don't lose out on the discount program?
Well, that program is the new Central Business Tolling District discount, citywide discount. That's on hold because that depended on toll revenue that is very low right now. So it's on hold, suspended until, and they're going to revisit it like in 90-day periods. So at some point it's supposed to start, but at this it's not going to start in July.
That's the Outer Borough Transit Fund discount program that was the legislators had decided to implement, right?
Yes.
Okay, now Brian, did you want to go over the taxi stuff since before we lose everybody?
I was looking more for an answer about the inspections, so not necessarily them negotiating, I guess, contracts. Our concern that we brought up at that meeting that he was at was them not using spots and taking, do we get those spots back? And they were going to do an inspection to see, how many of them are being used, are they actively using them? Because that was what was part of the previous contract. So that's what I was looking for in the email exchange, but it just seems like the answer that we got was more about the contracts are pending or the negotiating is pending. But I was more curious, what did they find? Did they validate all the complaints that we were making?
Sorry, I had misunderstood your email question, so I'm happy to reach out and ask him that again. I know also that we were going to send David some observations that people had made about where they were and were not being, where taxis were and were not.
Yeah, we gave some examples that day, but I mean, it wasn't long after that all this pandemic happened. So
Right.
I know in that email you said he was getting there within 2 weeks, I think it was, of that time frame, and that's why I was trying to clarify. Was it 2 weeks from when you sent the email that we got last week, or was it 2 weeks from our meeting? So
from the meeting.
So they should have gotten some good inspection. We had provided our feedback in the moment at the meeting.
Okay.
Because the issue is we wanted that information before they entered into negotiations on new contracts. So that's the time frame that we're talking about. Without that information, they're going to renew contracts based on maybe faulty data. What's necessary.
Okay. We reach back out to David and clarify that.
Great.
All right, Hector, are you in touch with the towns as far as the parking situation? Are they going to reopen all those things and start charging people? Are you in coordination with them as far as the added service and everything? So that it's not, have one without the other?
Hector, you're muted. There you go.
Yep, sorry. I know that's all going to be coordinated at the county level. We'll start reaching out to them once we know we're opening up. I did reach out early on, and they were not enforcing parking. They had said they weren't going to be doing that. So We'll let them know once we start servicing.
I can tell you the garages that you have sent out to, like a Wide Edge, they're still billing me.
Yes, we're the bad guys, so we're still charging, but the towns are not.
Yeah. Okay. So you're meant to be the bad guys. What do we do about that?
No. I mean, we have vendors that operate them, so that's how we pay the vendors, is by the revenue that gets collected. So.
But they're empty. You're charging people monthly parking for empty garages that no one's using.
But we're charging the ones that are using.
I'm sorry?
We're charging the people that are using it.
Well, how do you say that? I haven't gone there, and I've gotten a monthly. They charge me for the month, every month.
You can cancel it if you don't need it. I don't know. I'm just being funny, Mark.
I know. I'm just letting you know a situation that you were trying to build up that garage. This is not helping. I'm letting you know the word out there in those communities. So I can't. Why would I? It's an annoyance. Why would I? I'm gonna look for other means. It's adding on salt to the wound that they're getting charged. They're getting automatically charged every month for garage that no one's using, and you're trying to build up and get more people. That's not how to do it. That's just what I'll pass along. What I'm hearing.
Okay.
Anybody not asked yet? Is something they want to ask? Sheila?
Yeah,
Hi.
Go ahead. Who else wanted to go?
It's
Maybe
Rosemary
ask us now who
Muscali.
you are.
Hi,
Yeah.
it's Rosemary Muscali.
Hi, Graham. How are you?
Good, good.
Oh.
Hector, I missed the first part of your thing. I came onto the call about 10 minutes late. So if you answered this already, that's fine. But what's the word we're going to be saying once we do open up? Are we saying, that cleaning's being done, it's safe to ride the railroad, just do whatever, or are we still cautious? Is there limitations to when it is safe and when it's not? I mean, right now, every survey I've seen is people are not wanting to get on mass transit.
No, we're going to be emphasizing what we're doing to keep people safe, all the additional sanitizing and cleaning, and then the importance of wearing masks and practicing good hygiene practices. No.
But will the capacity be kept down such that social distancing will be able to be maintained?
It's going to be difficult to keep social distancing on trains, so it's going to be more relying on people wearing their masks and keeping their hands clean, not touching their face.
Should they plan to bring Lysol wipes with them to wipe down the seat before they sit down and, in between these little tips, help people feel safe if they know what to do. People know what to do when they go to the grocery store. They have to go to the grocery store. They know to wipe down the cart. They know to wear their gloves, to wear their masks, So if we could create that kind of a protocol and say, if you do that, you're fine,
like set up a publication to send out to everyone just beforehand or something. I don't know.
Tips on,
We're working on tips. Stuff is going on now, and we keep updating it. So yeah, that we're going to increase that as more people ride.
I think, it's going to be a big problem. People who have to go into the city, having to drive, because the only alternative they have is to drive. They won't even carpool because then they have to get in a car with someone else. And they get in the city, they got to worry about parking and the like. So I think if we can make them feel comfortable that it's safe to ride the railroad, but then the ones that have to hop on the subway, then you got another whole level with the subway. So we could figure out how to do this to make people feel safe. That's the key. And the more they do it and then they feel comfortable with it, then it'll grow. But being as open and transparent about what's being done, I think will help.
Okay.
I mean, the other thing too is the monthly tickets for people that a lot of the businesses are going to open with reduced office stuff. So either they're going to have, certain people always working from home, or maybe you go into the office twice a week. So the monthly ticket is going to get to be very pricey. They're going to be paying full peak fares equivalent because the monthly ticket won't make sense. And that's not going to attract them onto the train when they realize how much they're paying. So I don't know what we can do about it, but it's the reality. It's going to be very pricey to take the train to the city when you're not getting the equivalent of 50% off with a monthly ticket because you're only going twice a week.
The
Okay,
reality,
go ahead.
the reality is with all this is that this is all new territory for everybody. I've been working with the
Yep.
governor I've been at subways, and now even the airlines are not selling center seats. But unfortunately, the railroad can't do that. But it'll be a whole new traveling experience now for people when they get on the train.
And I think the passenger volume will be down significantly for a long time for two reasons. First, you got the people that are afraid to get on the train at all and going to drive. And then you've got the offices that can't stack up the office. And so they're going to have to continue to work at home. And most of the riders on the railroad are professionals who probably can work from home. So if they cut them down to going into the city 2 or 3 times a week, that's going to be a 40% reduction right there. But then if you get people paying the same, basically the same, because what's the break even, Hector, on number of days with a monthly ticket? 17 days? Like 17 days or something like that. So
Yeah.
you're going to end up paying for, almost the same. And you know how people feel about the monthly ticket as it is. So we want to make them use it for those days. I don't know if there's a way to either keep the off-peak fare in place for a while to make people, because you want to get them at least on the train feeling comfortable that it's okay to take the train, not feeding into their anxiety that they shouldn't be on the train anyway, and then using the cost of it as an excuse. We don't want to form a new habit of driving in.
Hector, any comment, Hector, or you'll pass it on?
Yes. I mean, it's all the stuff. We're thinking about all that stuff. There's no, answer right now.
And I assume some people won't buy monthlies; they're going to buy weeklies instead. And
Well, the weekly won't do you much good. You'll pay even more.
Well, it depends.
Unless they switch it off weeks.
But we also
depends how the office sets it up.
We also understand the railroad is hemorrhaging financially too. So all that's to be taken into account when they make their policy. Otherwise, we're going to get hit with an even higher, rate in 2 years.
And we can't just change fares on short notice without having public hearings and the board voting on it. So it's not something that's going to happen.
Well, you have it right now, right? You have it right now. You have the off-peak fare in place. Continue the emergency for a little while.
That's because we're running. Well, the logic is we're running off-peak service, so that's why we're only charging the off-peak.
Well, I think you're going to be continuing to. Maybe until you get through a couple of the phases. Phase 1 is construction and what's the other industry coming in? Most of the people now. It's not going to be till you get to phase 2 when you get the professionals that you're going to get the bulk of the typical Long Island Railroad rider.
Right. That's how we started off the meeting. So.
I heard the June 1st piece. I heard the June 1st piece, and that's lucky if we get to phase 1 on June 1st.
Right.
So I think it's going to be more like July 1st by the time you get to at least June 15th before you get to phase 2. I was on a Newsday webinar the other day with Ken Law, and he was saying there'd probably be a couple of weeks between each phase, at least. So
But then the governor said it may not be 2 weeks between, it may be less. So I don't think anybody really knows. And the city may come out before Long Island does.
I have a feeling the city's going to be after Long Island.
No, you know what? They're actually ahead in some ways from Long Island.
The bottom line is there has to be certain criteria that the governor has set in regard to lack of number of reports. The trend has to continue going down for a period. I'm not quite sure what it was. I think it's like
14 days.
14
days.
I think
it's 14 days for the hospitalizations and the hospital deaths, and
right.
And
so
then there is
right. The numbers have to trend down, and right now they're having an issue where this virus is mutating and it's doing things, including attacking children and things of that nature. So that's all part of this not knowing issue of what's going to happen. But if the trend does continue going down, then we can quote unquote open. But if you look at states, some of the states that have opened their beaches, and the president has told everyone, storm your capital and go to your governor.
Yeah,
And, you know, the guys with guns in Wisconsin it's like people have gone out
in
of
Texas. In Texas, yeah, the militias to the guy to the tattoo parlor that opened. That was on the cover of the first front page of the New York Times today. It's like people are going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been traveling with the governor, and you can't imagine the people that are coming to these meetings that police and everything have to stop from coming in because they're trying to storm him to force him to say that everything should open up. It's crazy. People have literally gone out of their minds with everything that's going on.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Hector, that there's some psychology here of how to get people to overcome their fear is needed, and like building up, a phase where we're building back the passenger ridership, because we have to recognize that work from home is going to continue to have to be a strategy. First, because people like it, and second, because the requirements for the businesses to open are going to start at probably 20-25% capacity in the office. So they're going to have people working from home either a couple of days a week, or, it'd be better if certain people worked in the office all the time and some people worked at home, because then they would buy the monthly ticket and they would definitely take the railroad because they're not going to drive every day. But if the office does it where, half the office comes in Monday, Wednesday, and the other half comes in Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, then both sides are going to see expensive Long Island Railroad per ride trips, because they're not going to get the discount of the effect of a monthly ticket discount of 50%. And so if it's that, they might say, well, maybe I'll just drive in. It's only 2 days a week. I'll see how the traffic is. And we just don't want them getting that, that behavior pattern of doing that. Because right now there's not going to be a lot of traffic in the beginning for the same reason. And people might say, hey, this wasn't so bad. I'll just drive into this. It all depends on what happens with parking. If parking's really expensive, then they won't do that. But if it's not, and if the railroad prices on a per ride basis is up at 100% of peak, because they're not getting the equivalent discount from the thing, they'll compare that price, the round trip price, to the parking, and they might say, well, I don't have to worry about dying, and I'll just pay a little bit more for parking. This is psychology, we all go through, with this, So we just have to try to plan the opening in a way that you don't let them take on that behavior. And we'll try to promote it from the environmental side and look how clean the air is and reducing greenhouse gases. We want to keep with that and the like. But I think people trump keeping their life than keeping the air clean. So we'll see.
Thank you. I think it's important. Very important. Soon I gotta get off because I'm getting kicked out of my remote office. They want to close it down. So before I go, you can continue on with anything that you want to bring up. Sure, go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to do a roll call. There's a few people I don't know who are on the phone. We've got Charlton, Jason, Matt Camper, Andrew Pollock. Rosemary, what's your last name?
Mascali, Mascali. I'm with Transit Solutions.
Great, thank you.
And Lisa Belinsky was supposed to be on. Lisa, are you on?
Yeah,
Lisa's on as well.
Hi, Lisa. Lisa Belinsky, also Transit Solutions.
Great, thank
So
you.
we're a program of the railroad that promotes transit ridership. That's why I'm asking all these questions.
Oh, okay, great. Are there any other callers on who are not members who I missed? Is Sheila Carpenter on? Christopher and Deborah, I have you. Sorry.
Did Marilyn get back on?
Marilyn is.
Yeah, I'm on.
Great.
And
Good.
Marilyn
Do
is
you
on.
have any questions, Marilyn? Anything?
No, my
Okay.
main concern was basically the mask and enforcing people to wear the mask. If not, how the Long Island Railroad would be handling something like that. But pretty much answered.
What about, garbage? I mean, gloves and things like that. Will you be having more
yeah.
garbage cans or more? Will you have bags in the
They're
trains?
called receptacles.
What can we do? Because you see the pictures of gloves all over parking lots, and I anticipate it will happen on the train as well. Have you guys thought about any kind of program regarding that?
We have to just clean it. And I guess we have to tell people to take their garbage with them.
Well, isn't the county?
Yeah, maybe include that in the announcement.
I have
The
bags
county has
ready.
a fine for it now, so I don't know if Suffolk does, or if it became a state thing. But if people are leaving their gloves or masks behind, I thought it was like $500, $1,000 fine.
It's everywhere. It's horrible.
Hey, Mark,
Yep.
can I just get one thing in before you take
Of
off?
course. You can keep going. I'm not ending it. I may have to go, but you guys can.
I just wanted to get this one thing while you were still on the line. Hey, Lisa?
Yes, Jerry.
Yeah, you posted on the website, the PCAC website, about the Atlantic ticket and about trying to get it to be permanent. I don't think we're on record as wanting it to be permanent. We're on record as saying that it's okay for it to continue on, pending further investigation or further examination. Where did you get permanent from? Is the other
So that-
council feel that strongly about it?
Sorry. So I should have specified that was speaking on behalf of the New York City Transit Riders Council, because that's where any of the remarks about Atlantic ticket, that we've made publicly have come from. You note that we did. You should note that we did not. PCAC, transit riders, nobody from our organization signed on to the letter that was sent out earlier this week, and that's because even though we've had a number of conversations here and at the organization in a larger place, we didn't think this is the right time to ask for certainly an expansion, and certainly that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to see if that's even something that everybody can agree on within the organization.
Okay,
So,
just the way it came across.
Well, then I'll follow up on that.
It looked like it was a PCAC position and not just the transit riders position.
Right, because the article says PCAC.
Yep, I have to specify that.
There may need to be some kind of a wall that maybe transit riders themselves have to make the statements in the future and not come out of PCAC. Because it's confusing.
Transit riders, I'm happy to do that with it for Atlantic ticket. Yep, absolutely.
Just because whoever the reporters are, they don't really get the distinction, I guess, when
Well, if you notice, I became the president in that also. So.
Well, okay. You guys, Jerry, you want to take over? Because they're saying we got to close down where I am.
Well, I have Andrew Pollack. One quick question for Hector. Any update on East Side access?
It continues.
So it's still happening.
And they're still on
Thank
schedule
you.
to complete. Yep, it's still happening.
Thank you.
Can I jump in, Charlton D'Souza?
Okay.
Yes. I do feel that, like, Passengers United in the very beginning, we came and we spoke out on the need for Atlantic ticket. So we would have loved to have been included in that letter, but we were not, asked about it. We didn't even know the letter was going out from the PCAC. And,
It did not go from PCAC. No, Charlton, there was no letter from PCAC. There was a letter that
Right.
Denise Miller and Councilman Grudenchik
But my
organized.
question is, why wasn't the PCAC included in that letter? Because this is your program. The PCAC created Atlantic ticket. It was not the other groups.
Right. So New York City Transit Riders Council imagined and proposed the Atlantic ticket, which started as free ticket. Right. So the council members and several other electeds and advocates wrote a letter that supported not just the permanence, but also that it be expanded to all train stations, and that there be a study that undertaken to move it onto Metro North within New York City as well. And that was, this is not really, in conversations that the Transit Riders Council had, they did not think that this was a good time to have any of those, to move any of that forward. There's just way too much going on.
I agree on that part. Yes, I do, because of the virus. I agree with that part. But I'm going to write a letter, which I'm going to CC you on. I have a statement that I'm going to be releasing regarding the whole Atlantic ticket and the Zone 3 thing. And I will be reaching out with my elected officials as well, because I just heard the conversation about the Long Island Railroad monthlies for the whole Long Island Railroad region. And I do believe that if any passenger is traveling to Atlantic Terminal, they should all get a discount, the whole Long Island, because you're asking a lot of people right now in a time when, a lot of people are out of work, a lot of people are not going to work every day. How can you charge them a full monthly to Penn Station? So, we at Passengers United will, we definitely support a reduced monthly rate for people coming back to work.
Well, that wouldn't only be Atlantic Terminal. People go to Penn Station or Jamaica. All riders are feeling the pinch with the pandemic. So we can't just pick one station and say only all those riders.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
I meant to clarify, when everything comes back 100%, anyone going to Atlantic Terminal on a regular basis should get the discount, because I'm a Long Island Railroad monthly ticket holder, and I've used, when they had the discounts when Penn Station was closed for, I think, a month, 2 months, it was nice to have the railroad have the discounted option to Atlantic Terminal. That was very nice, and it was a huge success. I think they had the highest ridership that summer. So I think that should be considered. So at least, because you know what the concern is that I'm hearing from Long Islanders that they feel it's unfair that city residents are getting a discount, but then they're being asked to overshadow the burden of cost. And there is some back and forth debate over that. So we have to figure out a regional way that everyone wins in a situation. And since Atlantic Terminal ridership is so low, even hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you still there?
So since the ridership is so low, in the mornings, like after 10 o'clock, there's very low ridership on the Atlantic branch. There's enough space to have people. And with all the social distancing things, we don't know how long this virus is going to be in effect. But I can tell you something, a lot of people have lost their jobs. So there has to be a creative way. And overnight, this is something I don't understand with the overnight. You have empty trains running overnight, where maybe you only have 15 or 30 passengers getting on. Why can't we have city ticket overnight? That would help so many people out. And with this cross-honoring that you guys are doing at the Long Island Railroad now, my concern is that between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., they're only letting passengers ride for free between Penn Station and Jamaica. And I spoke to Hector yesterday about this concern, that the Long Island Railroad should allow people within the whole Zone 3 to use any Zone 3 station to get off. Because if you're getting off at Jamaica, you now have to wait 1 hour for a bus to go to Rosedale or, Queens Village or Bayside. It makes no sense. So maybe that's something the PCAC could look into, to have it extended for the whole Zone 3. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Oh, well, I think that if you send that letter to Hector, certainly copy us and we'll share it.
Yes, definitely. And I do want to thank Hector. I want to thank President Philip Eng. I know he's been working very hard, and we're very grateful for Vanessa, Hector, and Philip Eng, and also you at the PCAC and the whole team there. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Excuse me, I have a question, because I waited patiently. One thing that I like to add is, and I like to defend with everything else, but the one thing I want to make clear, I've been in Atlantic Avenue passing when I have to help my fellow people with disabilities, because that's my other happy with OPWDD. Hector, you have a lot of customers that use Atlantic Avenue who have to maybe finish work, and they do travel on the LIR. They do appreciate that train is running from Atlantic to Jamaica or Queens Village. The one thing I think we need to watch is the ridership over there, because the ridership right now has gone a little bit up because the workers who are going between Brooklyn to Queens, because the Bernard Fine Center is in the Boondocks and almost the other end of going right into NASA, and Brooklyn's almost the other end. Because last time we discussed this, I seen there was a lot of help on that as well. But if we're going to be worrying about cleaning trains and stuff, that's why in some Walgreens they do sell hand sanitizer too, on that too. But are you guys going to have sometimes hand sanitizers for the workers too, Hector?
No, the workers have it. We are looking into potentially handing out individual little packets or putting up dispensers at stations. So that's something that we're looking at.
I'm glad you mentioned those because hand sanitizer, yes, it might be helpful, but we also need to be careful if the homeless don't try to steal them in those stations too. We need to be really careful.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Hey, Hector, I got a quick question for you. You think they'll be able to resolve that situation with the employees getting the COVID testing anytime soon? I know it was a big article in the Newsday today.
No, they're working on that. It's working with the two companies that are providing it. We expect it for a new program to be up and running by Monday.
Okay, all right, so it'll all be settled by the time we're ready to get back to work, hopefully.
Oh yeah. And to clarify, it's two different things. Right now, we have no issue with employees getting tested for COVID. That's happening. This was like the antibody testing that they introduced a new program that started last week.
Okay.
That providing COVID antibody testing at our facilities throughout the MTA. And then the vendor that they did it for like 2 days, and for whatever reason, they said they couldn't continue it. So now they're negotiating with another health provider to do the same thing.
Okay, because they made it sound in an article like you did it, now they want you to go to a lab, and now the lab's telling you that they can't handle it. So it's like right now it doesn't look like anything's getting done. So
no, like we can go to the lab, but they also were offering it at some of our employee facilities, so that these private providers, I think, were offering the service for free, but I guess they decided they couldn't continue it for whatever reason.
Okay. And I
Jerry,
guess everybody out there now wants to get this testing, so I'm sure it's not easy for you.
The problem that they also had is that there were a lot of places statewide that were not legitimate testing, and they were telling people that they were test sites, and they were reporting false tests, and people didn't know because there is no quote-unquote official testing. The only quote-unquote official testing from New York State was ones that were set up at Jones Beach on the island, and there were certain ones that were set by the governor for testing. Now CityMD, and there's a couple of other places that are allowed to do antibody testing and things of that nature. But there's been a lot of them that have sprung up across the state that are not legitimate testing or not sanctioned by New York State.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, I need to get off. They're giving me the dirty look here. If you want to continue, on, I just have to get off because they want to close down this building.
Okay, I think we're pretty much there anyway. Anybody else have anything they want to put out there?
Yes, there's one. This is Chris. There was one thing I wanted to agree with one of your members. They were charging people the testing, and now I know the governor has mentioned it already. There have been putting out advertisements on Facebook as well. They're supposed to be following the free charge signages. They're supposed to be putting signs and saying this is a free charging, but they do remind you to please check with your medical doctor first to let them know what you're doing. So that's the one thing, as the governor says, to be safe and be healthy.
And Chris, and the other thing is you got to make sure that you're going to a legitimate test site. People,
I know I'm waiting for you to say that.
Sorry. You know what? For those of you that I work in television, and I've been traveling with the governor doing the broadcasts for his press conferences. So I've gotten to know a lot of the ins and the outs, and I've seen a lot of the insanity across the state that's gone on. And people take advantage of people, and somebody will spring up something and say, we're an official test site, and they'll collect money from people, and people are paying them, and they're not real. They're fake test sites. And
I agree with
bringing up.
double
But
team. Nice.
it was the entire MTA that got the notice about the testing and then got it rescinded, because we had gotten that notice as well. So it was for everybody who works there.
Okay, I didn't realize that. The article I saw
No, I know I saw the article. Yeah.
kind of concentrated on the Long Island Railroad aspect of it, but
Yeah, no, it is, and he's the only one that I saw write that story. But it was it was, yeah.
Yay,
It was
Chris.
interesting to see the rescinding of the email so shortly after it was sent.
okay, does anybody have anything else, or?
Well, I want to make one point to Larry very quickly. Kevin VC was in Long Island today, and apparently a couple protesters were shoving him off with the cameras. So I can understand Larry's point of view when it comes to the insanity. And Kevin VC, by the way, works for News 12.
You know, people are stuck in their homes, and their whole livelihood and things have been interrupted. When the president of the United States tells people to go out and storm your building to get yourself opened up, it's inciting issues. And you know, when the governor's been traveling, the security and things of that nature, obviously he's got to have security, but they've had to beef it up, because we've had people that have tried to literally break into news conferences. I've had people kind of try to accost me that when I'm at these events, I've got security around me because they're doing the broadcast, and they want to interrupt the broadcast because that's the only way that they feel they can get their point across. It's really crazy across the state. Have somewhat, I hate to say it, but they've lost their minds.
And I'll mention it happened in Comac.
Okay, do we have any other transit issues to bring up, or?
I see we were joined by somebody with the initials ET.
I had a question.
Hold on there, Charlton, one sec. Charlton, hold on. Who joined with the initials ET?
ET. Oh God, Lisa.
Perfect
timing.
Yeah, there we go.
That was a
Sorry,
I just set up, Andrew.
All right, done.
Guys.
To end the meeting.
Hold on. Yeah,
hello? Yeah, I had a question about the Long Island Railroad. You know, when we're inside the train, the windows are closed, right? So they have the air that's coming out of the compressors on the top. I wanted to know, is that fresh air or is that recycled air? And what is is it on high, so that if someone has COVID-19, right, if they don't have a mask on, because unfortunately there are people who don't have masks on, does that circulate the air? And also in the restrooms, you know, when people use the restrooms, how does that refilter and recycle the air and get the bad air out?
Good question.
I know you're coming on and off. There's something about the air. So I know we have on the trains that there are the stuff that the air is cleaned or filtered. So
right, but is that because, like, you know, because we're all breathing in the same air, and I know, like, in the winter a lot of people get the flu on the railroad, so that could be a concern. But I mean, it is summertime. You guys have the air conditioning on, so I'm wondering, is the cold air conditioning temperatures, could that cause the spread of COVID-19? Because there was a report about AC units, and has the railroad even looked into that?
I mean, it seems like from everything you see, it seems like it's spread from people, you know, breathing or coughing on others. It's not necessarily in the air like that.
No, I mean from the restrooms, because, you know, some people use the restrooms and then they open the door. Sometimes the door to the restroom is open. So if you're sitting in those two-seaters right next to the restroom, any smells or particles or gases or whatever it is, you know, because you know how the human body is. So stuff can travel. It travels through the air ducts, through the air vents, I mean, has the railroad considered maybe, doing some testing on that to see how the particles travel through the air in the railroad train, in the cars? Maybe that's something you can reach out to the governor's office on.
I mean,
Can I take a
I
step?
think we do test there. Go ahead.
Let me just answer, because that's another that we've got to deal with. There are very, very few, and it is very rare that air conditioning systems take outside air other than your car. If you go to any building, if you go to any place that has an air conditioning system, they're usually contained. They very rarely draw outside air. Now, the size of this virus is so small that it would be a total revamp of Long Island Railroad's HVAC systems and things of that nature, including the buildings that you're going into, air conditioning systems. They are all internal, and they cannot effectively screen out this virus. So that's why they tell you to wear a mask, for that you're not only protecting others from what you're expelling out, but you're trying to filter also what's coming into you. So there is no, on the trains, I get, they're all enclosed systems, including every building, even your home. Your home air conditioning systems does not draw outside air. It only circulates inside.
Wow.
Sorry to say it, but I've had to deal with it in television trucks. I've had people that are looking for television trucks that draw outside air, and there aren't any. There's only 2 or 3 units in the country out of probably 800 units. Nobody draws outside air. And every building, I challenge you to find me a building that, other than your personal car, that draws in outside air. There are none.
Right. The reason why I was asking this question, because I just wanted clarification that maybe the railroad could have better planning, and maybe they could do some testing on that. They could, because they've hired all these contractors and labs to clean the trains and stuff. Maybe someone could do a scientific test on the railroad to see how the particles transfer through the car. It's just something worth asking, because a lot of people are concerned, and I feel like the restrooms could be a concern, only because if someone takes a number 2, in the car, and then you have those fumes that are coming out and gases, that's what I meant. I don't think it should be a problem, but, I just had to bring that up. And is there a way maybe they could have a spray in the bathroom that maybe could spray like a misting spray after someone's finished using the bathroom to kill any COVID-19 particles or germs in the bathroom?
I'm going to just answer one more thing. Sorry to Hector to pull you off of this one. Riders on the plane avoid the restrooms like the plague. And people only use the restrooms when they really have to. Whether you're in the bathroom doing a number 1, number 2, or sitting in the 5-seater, you're all breathing the same air, and it's going to travel the same way. The bathroom makes no difference than a person standing in a car or sitting. It's going to be a lot of people that have to be a little conscious of what they do, and they've got to wear masks. They've got to protect themselves and protect others. The bathroom has nothing to do with it. It's going to be the same as the regular car.
Is it possible that maybe the conductors could have a box or mask with them in case there's a passenger that doesn't have a mask, so they could give the passenger the mask? Because I think that's the concern. How do you enforce? Because this has been happening all month in Long Island, where there's a lot of people who don't speak English for whatever reason. And this is what I was told by some railroad people, that they don't have masks. So I think that's the concern. These things have to be worked out by the railroad.
So one of the points that's made consistently is that it does not have to be a mask. It needs to be a face covering. And
yes, you're right.
In fact, I'll use a bandana most of the time. I see people with scarves or, putting their shirts over their faces. So there's nothing that says you need to go out and buy a mask, because they're still in scarce supply and people are still price gouging for them.
Because I was at Penn Station last week, and there were people without masks on, and these were homeless individuals who have been roaming the terminal, going inside and outside. And what I don't understand is, if passengers bought a ticket, they should feel safe in Penn Station. They shouldn't have like 3 homeless men approaching them from behind, and they don't have a mask, and they're screaming, asking you for money. We don't know what particles are coming out of their mouth. And I asked Hector if they could rope off a certain area by the ticket machines at night to protect people, moving long term or something.
Okay, I think the railroad is going to make every best effort to, protect us. And you can't cover every eventuality. I mean, you can't wrap people in bubble wrap and with ventilators. It can't happen. So I'm pretty confident that the railroad is going to do the right thing by us. Is there any before we lose Hector?
No.
Going once,
Hector?
going twice.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Let's go grab a bite to eat. We're all hungry here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Take
thanks,
care. Thanks.
everybody. Appreciate you taking the
Bye,
time.
everyone. See you for the
Thank
board
you
meeting
all.
next week.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.